Hi, my name is Nina Olson. I teach clarinet at the MacPhail Center for Music in Minneapolis, and I'm here today to talk about preparing for Minnesota All-State Band auditions. And wanted to start out saying one of the things that will help you most preparing this etude is actually learning the scales. One of the scales you need to play for the audition is a chromatic scale, and if you look in the etude at measure 11, 12, 13, and 14, it's a chromatic scale. So you're getting double duty out of one practice plan. Another thing that's really important is from 22 until measure 43 in the etude, it's all in the key of A major or 3 sharps, and there's a 3-sharp scale, the A major scale, in the all-state prep. So I would definitely make sure that you practice that. Another thing that's important is that this goes up to high E, and you want to have it be a really solid, strong, confident note. If high E is the highest note you play and you only practice it in this piece, it's not going to be so hot. But if you play the chromatic scale and the other scales up to the high range in the all-state scales, you'll be more ready for it when you come to this, and you won't have to spend so much time in this piece just on that one detail. There are plenty of other details to pay attention to. It's always important to start practicing at a slower tempo than you need to perform. I purchased the online accompaniment and click track demos just to see what they would be like this year, and noticed that their slow version of the click track demo is a little faster than I think I would ask a student to practice to begin with. It starts at about 80 or 84, and I would have you start back at 69 equals the quarter note. So if I were to demonstrate measures 1 through 3, and of course I ended on the downbeat of measure 4, because then I knew I lined up with the click. The other thing is this goes from 2/4 to 3/8, and when you're using the metronome, sometimes you want the tempo to be twice as fast. So you'll have to put the tempo up to 138 for the 8th note. And it will sound like this. If you do that, you can move smoothly into the 3/8 measure. So for example, this is measure 3, 4, and 5. So definitely practice slower at first. I wouldn't play the whole piece all the way through slowly because it gets to be sort of tedious and it really strains your mental concentration. In rhythm, something to be really careful with is to notice that measure 20 and 21 have a different rhythm than measure 52 and 53. They are almost the same. The music before them is very similar in timing. It's 3/8 time for several measures. But at 51, it goes back to 2/4. So the endings are different. I'm going to play from measure 15 to measure 21. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And now I will play from measure 50 to the end. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And 2. So make sure you really do the right number of beats at the end. It's going to be very tempting not to. Another thing that's really important with rhythm is to play triplets exactly evenly against 8th notes. So for example, in measure 30 and 31 and 32 and 33, we go 8th notes, triplets, 8th notes, triplets. And so when I put those with a metronome, the way I like to make that smooth, one thing I do is just use words. Pizza, pizza, pineapple, pineapple, pizza, pizza, pineapple, pineapple. Another thing I will do, and I use the metronome so that I keep myself straight and even. The other thing I like to do is to play a simple scale like F major. I'll play 8th notes. And then I'll play triplets. I call it the pendulum exercise. The low note hits a click and the high note hits a click. That will be in a link to a document you can download and read. Dynamics can be kind of a tricky thing to work on, and I think one of the reasons we get in trouble with it is that we forget that a dynamic is not a decibel level. A dynamic is a volume, but it's also a character. So mezzo piano is sort of gentle, sort of mysterious, sort of in the background. Mezzo forte is sort of in the foreground. It's sort of strong, it's sort of happy, it's sort of angry. It can be a lot of different things. So when you're making your dynamics changing, if you think of the character of the note and not just louder and softer, I think it's much more fun and much more interesting, and then I find that I'm much more successful. So I think of the first two measures of this piece as an introduction, and the next measure as we're really going now. And then suddenly we're back in the background, and then we're in the foreground again. So if your dynamic changes for an artistic reason instead of just a mechanical, louder, softer reason, I think we usually play more effectively. That's something I like to work on. I like to make sure when I have a sudden dynamic that I'm really setting myself up well. When we play suddenly soft, it's very tempting to play la 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 loud and then soft with almost no energy at all. But in fact, soft needs to have just as much energy as loud. If I leak air out of the corners of my mouth while I play, you can hear there's still a lot of air when I'm soft, even just as much air as when I'm loud. One thing that takes courage in this piece is measure 34. You play soft and gently until the middle of that measure, and then it's strong. You need to have enough air support for measure 33 so that you're ready to play loud in 34, and you just have to become accustomed to making more sound and letting that high note sing. For articulation, it's important to think about what staccato means. It doesn't mean short. So when I play this piece and I see short notes, I don't play short on every single note. When I start at 44, I don't play like this. Staccato really means separated, or detached. So when I play the quarter notes, I'll play them sort of like an eighth note. If I see a staccato on the quarter note, I think it's kind of half the length. So. If it was not staccato, it would sound like this. So there's a lot of room for shaping how short you want it to be without clipping it off, and then you're still staccato. My students who perform the most successfully and the ones who've been able to successfully audition for our all-state band have started kind of early, before they felt like they needed to, and they practice little bits at a time. They don't worry about having the whole thing finished all at once. They'll do things like practice similar sections together. You could practice all of the 3/8 measures back to back one day and make those feel really consistent. You could practice just the arioso, the stesso tempo, all at once one day and work on the dynamics of that part. One day you might go, oh yeah, there are 16th notes in the arioso. I'm going to practice just those and make sure they're really steady. So you can get a lot done in a short amount of time. And if you keep doing this a little bit at a time in advance, you'll find that you feel really confident and prepared when you get to the audition. One of the reasons I get the most nervous is when I'm not ready. So I encourage you to practice the scales to help prep for the etude and to practice the etude in pieces and under tempo and as early as you can.